Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the Power Broker. John Walker looked up to his older brother Michael quite a bit, especially after he sacrificed his life serving during the Vietnam War. So John decided to follow in his brother's footsteps, and he went into the military service as well. But that still wasn't enough. John felt like he still wasn't the hero that he needed to be. He kept comparing himself to Michael, and what exactly is a hero without a few super abilities on the side, am I right? So he paid a visit to the Power Broker. The Power Broker is being teased throughout Falcon and Winter Soldier right now, but what do? Who are they? Well, they trade their knowledge of technology for high-paying customers who want to undergo this risky process to basically become a superhero. It's like a gamble to get some powers. Half the time, the clients wouldn't even survive. See, it's not that easy to become a superhero. But it worked for John Walker. Unfortunately, it enhanced his strength a hefty amount. So now we have the motivation, we have the superpowers. So what's the next step? And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be great. You guys are super helpful. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's fly right back into this list. Number 9, he became Super Patriot. Before becoming Captain America, John Walker tried the hero gig just in another fashion. First, he was the Super Patriot. He made a spectacular first appearance in Captain America 323, and John Walker was standing up for America and its true ideals. Nice. He even chose July 4th to make his grand entrance. What a patriot. What a super patriot. So Cap walks by as this is happening when he's making his big debut, and he sees a big poster with his face on it with a big red X through the center. It's kind of like America's Got Talent. And then on the other side, we see the super patriot with a big yes on his side. Okay, that's odd. So now he's starting to publicly shame Captain America in front of his supporters. He's trying to win over the crowd. And if a cool America monologue wasn't enough to do it, he had his own buck, the Bold Urban Commandos. There were 3 of them, and they staged attacks to make John Walker look better. But you could only look so good until number 8. Fought Captain America. So where John and his 3 Bold Urban Commandos staged another attack, Captain America arrived to save the day. And then readers get treated to a star-spangled battle. And John puts up a pretty good fight as well. He can actually go toe-to-toe with Captain America. Thanks, Power Broker. It worked. They end up battling it out for 27 minutes straight. 27 minutes. That's like a full TV episode of just getting punched in the face. That's terrible. But Super Patriot was never able to really land a blow on Cap, and Cap was never able to keep Super Patriot down. So they're just standing there out of breath for 27 minutes like, now what? So Super Patriot leaves before doing the worst thing ever in all of this. He calls Steve a loser, and then he runs away. Number 7, no rules. Captain America 332, the villain Warhead drops in via parachute with a message. Make war some more. Signed, Warhead. You know, in case we confused him with somebody else falling from the skies. He set up a table on top of the Washington Monument, and then he pulled out a nuclear device. So it's not looking like a good situation at all. Perfect time for a hero like Super Patriot. Yeah, he came in and used his powers and saved the day, proving that he can indeed be worthy of the hero life. Well, he tried to, but it didn't go as well as he planned. He climbed up the side, up to Warhead and his well-balanced table, and then he started hucking throwing stars at him at first. He hit him in the face a couple times. And then when that didn't work and he was close enough, he just grabbed the table and threw it into a diving board of doom and just hucked this guy right off into the skies. And he did not survive the fall at all. I mean, you could have handled this in literally any other way. You have superpowers. Come on, use your head. Number 6, became Captain America. One of the biggest game changers in the MCU was when John Walker came out at the end of the episode, winked at the camera, and then showed us his brand new Captain America suit in the meantime. This happened, of course, in the comics as well, when Steve Rogers had to abandon his identity due to the Red Skull's manipulation of the Commission on Superhuman Activities. So now somebody has to suit up, somebody has to take his spot. The government needed a new figure. So in issue 333 of Captain America, it was titled The Replacement. The government's weighing their options on who should be the next to lead the nation, so they go with the guy who just launched a dude off of a building. Awesome, John Walker just got the promotion of a lifetime, and now we're all screwed. Number 5, Spider or Man. So Peter has grown extra arms before, but I don't think anything was worse than his transformation in the spectacular Spider-Man disassembled storyline. Adriana Soria, aka the Spider Queen, saw Spider-Man as a potential mate, of course, so she forced a kiss upon Parker, and after some time passed, he began turning into a literal spider. So gross. starting with growing an extra set of eyes, which is, it's kind of funny. Peter can feel himself change as well during this, which is pretty, dare I say, humorous at times, because this dude is now craving fly soup, and he's growing bristle hair in places you don't want to grow bristle hair. The best part is that MJ still makes this guy go to a wedding despite his transformations. He doesn't stick around too long, obviously, because he starts to panic and change even more, so now he's just swinging around the city, not even sure what he's doing. He can't think or breathe, but he knows that the queen is calling him. His body starts to then change even more until eventually he's, a literal human spider. MJ's like, hey, you're fine, it's an open bar. What could go wrong? Let's go dance. Number 4, an eye for an eye. In Spider-Man The Other, Evolve or Die, Part 6 features a specific injury to Parker that lives in my head rent-free. Part 6, The Reckoning, kicks off with Morlun and Spider-Man going at it. They fight on the roof of the Bugle, and then eventually they crash inside the actual office. It's pretty exciting. Peter tries to take the fight elsewhere, as there's too many innocent people around, like say, I don't know, Peter's boss, for example. Peter is trying everything, and Morlun isn't even breaking a sweat. Morlun then yanks out Peter's left eye right out of the socket, and then to make us feel even more sick, he eats it like a cherry tomato. Yum. Number 3, Craven's Last Hunt. Released back in 1987, Craven's Last Hunt is one of the best Spider-Man stories to this day. The 6-parter begins with Craven shooting Spider-Man with a tranquilizer and then burying him alive. Now, if that already didn't sound horrible enough, Craven suited up as the webhead and became a better version of Spider-Man. Yeah, his version would save the day by brutally attacking criminals with the help of Vermin as a creepy sidekick. 2 weeks go by before Peter wakes up underground. He then chases down Craven, but after Vermin almost takes Peter out, Craven reveals that his hunting days are since done. While Peter chases down Vermin, Craven literally retires. This guy goes home, he leaves a confession tape that he buried Spider-Man and took the suit, all that jazz, and then Craven takes his own life. It's bizarre, but once you start this story, it's quite literally impossible to put down. Number 2, Gwen Stacy. This one we saw on screen in 2014, and honestly, I don't care how you felt about the Andrew Garfield movies, this scene slapped. It was wild. My throat was so tight, like the last time I cried in a movie theater was probably Bridge to Terabithia and then The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'm being honest. I'm opening up to you guys. The Amazing Spider-Man issue 121 and 122 are titled Turning Point and The Goblin's Last Stand. These issues shocked readers. At this point in the comics, Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, had forgotten who Spider-Man really was due to amnesia. Meanwhile, his son Harry was not in great shape as well. He was undergoing detoxification. He was having some substance abuse issues, so Norman was now stressing hard. Financial problems, family problems. He eventually had a mental breakdown, and all of a sudden he remembered his dark goblin side. And also he remembered who Spider-Man really was. His first target was Gwen Stacy. You gotta attack the heart, right? Peter meets them on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. He throws his hardest hits, but when Gwen is thrown over the side of the bridge, Peter can't catch her at the right angle, and in turn, her neck snaps because of the falling momentum. It's shocked readers and it shocked viewers. Like I said, a lot of tightness in the throat. Number 1, Peter's death. Moving on over to the Ultimate Comics, the death of Spider-Man is obviously one of the bigger ones on this list. So when Peter gets a call from MJ saying that Norman has escaped prison, he knows his family is at risk. And this was also happening while the New Ultimates and the Ultimate Avengers were going at it. So while Peter was trying to handle his own problems, he saw that the Punisher was taking aim at Captain America. So he jumped in the way, being a hero, and literally took a bullet for him. As if that wasn't already a rough night, Osborn and the crew are now gearing up to take the battle to Peter's front steps. Peter barely holds on during this fight. He's asking bystanders to call 911. He's not feeling great at all. And come issue 160, the Goblin lays one final blow, and that's the last we see of Ultimate Peter Parker.
Number 10, Abandoned by Stick. Really, Matt's story, as you're going to find out, is all about loss, tragedy, and grief. While there's a lot of ups for Matt Murdock, there's also been a lot of downs. One such high he rode was being trained by his master Stick, who began training him after the accident where he lost his sight, but had all other senses heightened as a result. However, shortly after his father's death, Stick too would leave Matt, and at a time when Matt really needed him too. Matt had tracked down the last man involved in his father's death. A masked Matt attacked him, but found himself overwhelmed by the women who worked there, who seemed to take out all their worldly rage on him, attacking him in kind. In the scuffle, he accidentally pushed one of them with enough force to send her crashing and falling out of a window. She would live, live, but the incident would awaken other personas living deep within her. This woman would become Daredevil's villain and sometimes love interest, Typhoid Mary. Matt at the time, however, believed he'd killed the woman and ran back to the gym in search of Stick. But Stick was gone. He had abandoned Matt because of what he'd done. Ouch. Sucks. Number 9. Getting involved with Typhoid Mary. Typhoid Mary wasn't just a person that Daredevil hurt, she'd also become a recurring love interest of his, on and off. And honestly, the moment where he accidentally pushed her out of a window could be considered one of the worst moments of his life, for how much grief Typhoid Mary would cause in his life both as an enemy and as a lover. Typhoid Mary suffers from a dissociative personality disorder, meaning she has personalities that reside within her that are more calm or sweet, but then there are of course also sides to her that are more violent or deadly, and each one is literally their own personality, separate from the other. Typically, the persona of Mary is her sweeter side, Typhoid Mary is her more villainous one, and Bloody Mary is probably the most violent, hate-filled, and unhinged personality of hers. However, it should be noted that while Typhoid Mary is one of the worst people to get involved with Matt, he was also likely one of the worst things in her adult life, at least, to have happened to her, with him re-triggering her split personalities to resurface. Although it wasn't him initially that caused the split, at least. That was trauma from her past. Some really intense trauma, to be real about that. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Daredevil lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. His mother's fate. Not the fact that she became a nun, but more what caused her to leave her family. Later on, we would learn that Matt's mom, Maggie, had abandoned her children due to experiencing severe depression following their birth. As a result of her depression, she also became obsessed with Matt's safety and paranoid that her husband was plotting against her. One night, she became so distraught and confused by her depression that she tried to do harm to young Matt. Jack stopped her, but Maggie was overwhelmed with fear. Terrified, she felt the best course of action was to leave her family so she couldn't do any harm to any of them. She left, became a nun, and even after she recovered from her mental illness, did not return, leaving Matt to grow up without his mother, led to believe by his father that his mother had died when he was very young. Matt would not learn until much later in his life what had really happened to her. Number 7. The death of his father. Let's go back to Daredevil's origins. Right off the bat, life was pretty tough for Matt, starting out as a hero. His dad was Jack Murdock, who was a boxer, and always had dreamed of a better life for his son. And while Matt would go on to have a pretty good life, becoming a lawyer, Jack wouldn't be around to see it. Jack Murdock was killed after he refused to take a dive in a rigged boxing match. The fixer, Rosco Sweeney, had been the one to order the hit, as he was the boxing organizer who worked with Jack and had ordered him to throw that match. Daredevil would pursue the fixer, attempting to get revenge for his father's death, but Sweeney would die of a heart attack during the chase. Number 6. Secret identity exposed. One of the worst things to have happened to Matt, multiple times really at this point, is having his identity revealed. There are a few instances where this happened prior to Kingpin even learning of his identity through information that Matt's ex at the time, Karen Page, sold him, but I would still say that the reveal to Kingpin was still probably one of the worst. Also, to be clear, Karen Page I don't think explicitly sold that information to Kingpin. She sold the information and then it ended up in Kingpin's hands. Kingpin used the information that he got to make Matt's life a living hell, ruining his civilian life, leaving Matt destitute, with even his reputation as Daredevil and even his costume left in shambles. It really was a rough time just all around.
Number 5. Buck upgrade. So now he's got a brand new suit, he's got the best frisbee of all time, but what else does John Walker need? Well, how about some backup for starters? He brings back the bold urban commandos who I mentioned earlier. The Buckies, as they're referred to, wore Captain America masks, boots, pants, but they were topless for some reason. I don't know, maybe they were into wrestling growing up. John's right-hand man, Lamar Hoskins, has been by John's side since the military, so he was obviously asked to be the main sidekick, who we also got to meet in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And he stood tall on the front cover of Captain America issue 334, and now he goes by the name Battlestar. The other two guys also got a cool upgrade. Now they're referred to as left and right winger. They were cool until they revealed John's identity to the public, and then they were kind of not cool. Left winger and right winger tried to use John's old Super Patriot tech against him, but they were eventually beaten down and arrested. So now with his identity out and about, it was only time for John to take on another super alias. This time, number 4, becoming US agent. He's back again. One of his more stylish looks, if you ask me, but John Walker returns, this time with a blacked out Captain America suit, and the shield is also less spangly. He comes back and he's put to the test. He's forced to battle an Ironmonger, and when he goes to take it down alone, the shield actually seems to work out pretty well for him. Because in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who trained him how to use that shield in the first place. And judging by the trailers for Black Widow, because we still have to watch those until it's released, it looks like Taskmaster can throw a frisbee quite well. Number 3. He joined the Avengers. In West Coast Avengers issue 45, when Hawkeye sets up a team, well, on the West Coast, the government wanted an official in there to make sure all was going well. So funny enough, at this time in the comics, Vision was also trying to get government clearance again, so they sent in US Agent. This led to John rescuing his former partner, Battlestar, from the power broker, so now this guy has his buddy back, and he's part of the Avengers. That's a pretty risky spot to put John Walker. I hope we never see him join the Avengers on the big screen, but seeing White Vision in the mix now kind of makes me nervous. Maybe the West Coast Avengers will happen, maybe, just maybe. Number 2, he joined the Force Works. After the West Coast Avengers fell apart, because naturally that's what happens when John Walker is part of the team, the costume and the shield were tossed to the side. So Tony Stark put together an all-new team known as Force Works. Scarlet Witch talked John Walker into joining the team because she honestly believed that John was the backbone to the entire squad. She kind of liked how he would run things. So he planned on running the team on tight military lines and the values of strength and dedication. So John joined the team and he wore a fancy new suit with an upgraded shield. This time it was an energy shield. John remained a member and went against the Kree, the Scatter, and the Mandarin. He was doing an alright job until he reverted back to his old ways. One mission had Force Works team up with the Avengers, and that wasn't a pleasant reunion. John Walker went into conflict with War Machine and Hawkeye, so he had to quit the Force Works as well. God, you can't put this guy anywhere. And last but not least, number 1, he took the serum. In the emotional ending of episode 4 Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we find out what John Walker did to the remaining vial of the super soldier serum. He took it. Yeah. Zemo broke most of them except for one. John talked it over with Lamar Hoskins about if he would take the serum if presented the opportunity. So when Walker he does in fact take it, and it's shown to us in a pretty brutal way. While looking for Lamar, Walker reunited with Sam, and then they were all ambushed by the Flag Smashers, Nico and Dovik included. Now, Nico held back Walker for a moment, just long enough that Karli Morgenthau would attack Walker. Now, luckily, Lamar got in the way, and then that's when Karli accidentally delivered a fatal blow to Lamar. And this caused John Walker to lash out, and it's pretty bad. He can't control himself at this point. The serum has made him powerful and even more insane. And when he's attacking Nico in the heat of the moment, he goes a little bit too far. Poor Nico. This was the same episode where he told Karli that he was actually a Captain America fan growing up, so double oof. Number 10, his childhood. Superheroes usually don't have an easy childhood. Either they're bullied, they're born with advanced abilities that make them an outcast or a threat, or something traumatic happens with their parents. And in the case of Sam Wilson, he grew up in a tough neighborhood in Harlem, and his father Paul was a minister and tragically met his fate one night after trying to stop a fight between two gangs. Sam was only 9 years old when this happened, and soon after, his mother Darlene was attacked by a mugger and she didn't make it. She passed away protecting her children. Sam, being so young and vulnerable, struggled with his parents passing, and his path hasn't always been that of a hero's path, because before he became the Falcon, he became... Guys, before we continue on to number 9 on our list, we just want to say thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't done so already, if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, because it really does help us out on our channel quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now back to some more Sam Wilson. Number 9. Snap Wilson. So after the death of his parents, Sam figured the next move would be to dip down into the criminal life. He was angry, he was upset. This was probably what I would have done. So he went by the name of Snap Wilson, and long ago in the comics, there was a Captain America and Falcon issue that said, "Revealed at last, the true facts behind the origin of the Falcon." And then it says, "Today, Falcon slays Captain America at the command of the Red Skull." What? So this history with Sam being a hustler was retconned so that the Red Skull had in fact used the Cosmic Cube in order to make Sam a criminal turned into Captain. Now, it was apparently part of Red Skull's plan to use Falcon against Steve when the time was right down the road. Now, later on in Captain America issue 276, this retcon was cleared up even more when Sarah refers back to Snap Wilson yet again. She goes on to explain in that issue that it was all over the newspapers back when the Red Skull used Sam against Captain America. So many writers throughout many of these years of comics actually wanted to retcon the whole Snap Wilson phase. Appropriately so. Number 8. The other snap. I mean, turning into dust and vanishing for 5 years, that's probably gotta suck. Now, of course, we have to mention Infinity War on this list. So when Thanos had all of the stones but one, everybody made a last effort to stop the Mad Titan, but it just wasn't enough power. Falcon tried to stop him by shooting his twin guns at him, but Thanos used the Space Stone on him to knock him out of the air onto the ground. Ouch. And then Thanos then gave each and every other Avenger a piece of pain, with Vision of course being last, having his Mind Stone pulled out of his forehead. And after he obtained all of the Infinity Stones, it just got worse. Falcon turned into ashes while he was crawling through the grass of Wakanda, and while he was fading out of existence, Rhodey was seen not too far behind him, calling out Sam's name. So sad. I was so happy when he came back, but like, man, having that be the last that we saw of all these heroes for a whole year, that wasn't easy on my emotions. Number 7, Rosco Simons. Rosco was a Captain America fan, as we all are, and he got the opportunity of a lifetime in Captain America issue 181. He proved himself more than capable to carry the shield after Cap had left it, and it was up to Sam Wilson to train Rosco Simons. So Sam had this mindset. He was hopeful that Rosco would see the real life dangers of actually wearing the suit. It wasn't just Halloween, you put on a suit, you whip a frisbee, and then you're like, cool, I got him. It was scary, it was hard. It was at a time in the government where it wasn't a good idea to be this type of character. And he was hoping that he would retire. But in issue 182, Sam tells Rosco that he's gonna look after him. So Falcon did his best to protect the new hero, but in the very next issue, we see front and center the death of a hero. It was pretty brutal as well how Red Skull took him out. It was a very public way in order to warn others who want to step up to that same mantle. Now poor Rosco, but also poor Sam Wilson. He told this guy he'd watch his back, and now he has his blood on his hands, and also he has his blood on his future suit, which is not ideal. Number 6, lost a fight to Ant-Man. It was a great audition, but it will never happen again. Those are the words Sam Wilson says to Scott Lang when they meet for the second time in Captain America Civil War. The first time they met was when Scott was sent to the New Avengers facility by Hank Pym in the first Ant-Man movie. See, Scott wasn't aware that he was going there, but once he arrived, Sam Wilson was sure aware of his presence. Falcon demanded to know why he was there, and when Ant-Man said he needed to borrow the signal decoy, Falcon just wasn't buying it, and they went at it. And at one point, Sam pulled out guns and shot at Scott. That's how much he thought he was a spy, but Scott won, not by using the higher ground, but by using the smaller one. He shrunk down and got into Sam's jetpack, pulled some plugs, and then Sam fell down to the ground, letting the new Avenger finish his mission. So Sam called into Natasha and made it very clear that Steve never hears about this in the future. Don't worry, Sam, I think all is forgiven at this point.
Number 5, depression. While the revelation of his mother's fate and the death of his father was hard, something else that Matt would inherit would also prove challenging for most of his life. That was Matt's own depression. Like his mother before him, Matt has also struggled with his own emotions and mental health throughout much of his life. We later learn that the struggle of depression is also seemingly Matt's every day. Depression isn't something that he can really escape, but the silver lining is, although he's felt the weight of it, he's also learned how to cope with it. Not necessarily recovering from it fully, but definitely finding a way to live life with his depression and at times kind of move through it, refusing to let it overwhelm him, even at times when, based on what was going on, this likely seemed or felt impossible for him. As a result, Daredevil as a hero likely possesses some of the strongest willpower throughout Marvel's characters. I think it goes like Doom and then Daredevil, with maybe 1 or 2 people in between them. I feel like if you're depressed every day and you're constantly struggling and being a superhero and dealing with all of the other stuff in life, that's pretty impressive. You gotta have a strong will. Number 4, Shadowland. The Shadowland story was really brutal for Matt Murdock and also for readers and fans. DD ended up becoming the leader of the Hand, but it would later be revealed that he was actually not in control of himself during this time, as he was possessed by the Beast of the Hand, a demonic entity. Daredevil did a lot of awful things during this time, including killing Bullseye, building a mighty fortress known as Shadowland, and attempting to kill BFF Foggy. No, not Foggy. All in all, the whole event was a rough go for Daredevil, and by the end of it, he was forced to leave Hell's Kitchen and go on a journey of self-discovery as he tried to find his way back to his initially heroic path. Shadowland was rough overall. It's a rough time in Daredevil's story. Number 3, marriage to Mila Donovan. So all in all, although Daredevil considered it in retrospect to be a mistake, I'm not trying to say that their whole marriage was awful, because that's not what happened. Matt and Mila had some good moments, and there was a time that they were both happy together, but ultimately their marriage ended up causing them both a lot of pain in the end overall. At one point, Mila herself didn't even believe that their marriage was ever real, convinced that Matt had manipulated and lied to her. She filed for an annulment, and it hurt Matt to receive the request and even have to consider that. However, Matt and Mila would make it past this and eventually end up back together, seemingly happy for a time. But her worry over Matt's safety would cause her to seek out the help of a therapist, who was secretly Mr. Fear in disguise. Oh goodness. Instead of helping Mila, Mr. Fear actually only made things worse for her, causing her to become more fearful and paranoid. Eventually, Mila did enough harm that she was arrested and considered criminally insane after she accidentally pushed someone into the path of a speeding train. Don't think Mila has ever recovered from all of that terrible stuff that happened to her, alas. I mean, at least she's still alive, I guess? As we move on to the next points. Number 2. Death of Electra. While she may have been returned to life later on, the death of Electra, Matt's first love, still hit him hard. The two hadn't been together for some time, but had dated back in college before Electra mysteriously disappeared. She resurfaced years later and was revealed to be an assassin, competing to become the Kingpin's #1 hitman. Or hit woman, perhaps. Unfortunately, she was up against Bullseye, who decided to kill off his competition. He and Electra had a dramatic fight that ended with an iconic panel showing her being stabbed through with her own sai by Bullseye, but only after he had already seemingly cut her throat by throwing a playing card at her, so don't forget that part. While Electra and Daredevil weren't together at the time of her death, her fate at the hands of Bullseye still haunted Matt, and he probably still thinks back to that moment and is like, even though Electra is alive now. Number 1. Death of Karen Page. Yeah, Daredevil loses a lot of people that he cares about. Honestly, it's no wonder he struggles with depression, considering just how much loss he suffered in his life. I mean, that's gotta be really hard. Karen Page was another close person who became a victim and a target as a result of being so close to Matt, aka Daredevil. For many years, she was Daredevil's confidant, his on and off again girlfriend who knew of his secret identity. In fact, I believe Karen Page was one of the first people, don't quote me on this, but I think she was one of the first people to actually find out about Matt's secret identity as Daredevil, so yeah. Eventually, her closeness to Matt put her on a very dangerous collision course with one of his arch nemeses, Bullseye. As Bullseye, who pretty much never misses, targeted Daredevil with his own billy club, Karen jumped in front of the projectile to save Matt, and in so doing was killed as the billy club penetrated her heart.
Kicking off the list at number 10, left arm issues. Since Iron Man 1, Tony's left arm hasn't gotten a break. When Tony makes his first flight escaping the 10 rings, a tank shoots him out of the sky, hitting his left arm. In Iron Man 2, he gets electrocuted by whiplash and his text shows that his left arm is in the red. It's not looking good. Iron Man 3, Tony uses snow to soothe his arm after crash landing, so it must be still hurting. In Civil War, Tony literally says to Nat, "My left arm is numb, is that normal?" Cut to an hour later, Tony's arm is even in more pain and now in a sling after Wanda dropped a car on it. Even in Spider-Man Homecoming, he's supporting his arm whilst giving Peter a lecture on being a superhero. Makes sense why he snapped with his right hand. Left one's probably done, he probably has no nerves left. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, this list is rather dark, so all that love and thumbs up and good vibes, sure to help us out as well. Also, those thumbs up literally help us in our studio, so thanks for your support. Let's get right back to the list. Number 9, killed by Captain America. Tony and his tech are pretty close, but in Age of X story, we see the two get a little too close for comfort. After a virus began taking its toll on Tony, he started to literally merge into his armor. That's like something from Black Mirror, that sounds horrible. He decided that a name change was also in order, so he started going by Steel Corpse, which gotta say, looking at him is much more fitting. He, alongside other much livelier Avengers, headed out to take down some mutants, but upon arrival in superhero fashion, they changed their mind and opted to help everybody else instead. We love a change of heart, nice. Only Tony's advanced suit wasn't exactly on board, so now we have a situation. Tony implored Cap to save them, and at that moment, there was really only one way Cap could do it. R.I.P. Tony. Number 8, punched by Captain Marvel. Avengers Endgame showed Tony being saved by Captain Marvel when he was stuck in deep space. But in Civil War 2, they aren't exactly pals. When the inhuman Ulysses Kane starts to divide the superhero community, they get off on the wrong foot. Ulysses has this ability where he can predict possible futures, and in one of those visions he saw catastrophe. Captain Marvel wanted to act on this, we can literally see the future, what a way to have the upper hand, right? But Tony, he wasn't on board. He was concerned about the fact that nobody really knew exactly how Kane's powers were working. That was one thing, but but to punish somebody else over something they may do in the future, well, it feels morally wrong. When Spider-Man and Captain America travel to Washington to seek out a possible vision, conflict does in fact arise. It's Civil War too, you gotta remember that. So Tony gets punched so hard by Captain Marvel that he falls into a coma. Yikes. Number 7, Endgame Sacrifice. Of course, the worst things that happened to MCU Tony is also one of the best things that happened to the universe. After 5 years of half the population missing, Tony agrees to work out a time heist with the remaining Avengers, and when they get back with the stones, sans Natasha, Thanos is waiting there too. Tony didn't take the stones and fly away, no, instead he snapped his own fingers and wiped out Thanos and his army. Of course, mirroring the ending of the first Iron Man film, reminding us he is in fact Iron Man. It was a great moment, but I knew Tony was gonna die. But to see him do it in this way felt so fitting. I shed a little drop of sadness in the theater, maybe a few or 5. I couldn't stop crying. Number 6, Paralyzed. Kathleen Dare made her first appearance in Marvel Comics with Iron Man issue 233. She was this fun-loving young woman who fell for Tony Stark, but unfortunately she was psychologically unstable, so that love turned into something more sinister. Later on in Iron Man 242, Kathleen shot Tony and in turn, he was paralyzed. The injury damaged Tony's spine quite a bit. He wasn't even sure if he would ever walk again. Tony Stark is quite dramatic, he likes to put on a show, we know this, and in Iron Man issue 284, he reveals his biggest trick yet. The cover shows Tony Stark laying in a casket with the text underneath reading, "The death of Anthony Stark." Huh, what? Around him are other superheroes. They're mourning the loss of their friend and fellow Avenger. Like in Avengers Endgame, everybody shows up. Even Dr. Doom, he proposes a toast in honor of a worthy opponent who has fallen. But Tony is always prepared, even after death. He had written a note to Rhodey previously, and the note mentions a keycard that would give him access to the entire complex in the form of a CD. I got Tony Stark's Secrets and Big Shiny Tune 6. What are we feeling today, folks? Rhodey collects himself, puts in the CD, and clicks play. It's a dream scenario, really. Tony explains to Rhodey that the world still needs Iron Man, and then you see a suit made specifically for Rhodey. What a moment! Again, it mirrors Tony's final holograph message in the MCU, a powerful moment on screen and on page. So Rhodey was stressing. There was so much responsibility bestowed upon him, all the while he's trying to mourn the loss of a close friend. That's a loaded day. So finally, he suits up and it's a blast. Iron Man lives again. Nice. Turns out Tony wasn't actually dead at all, rather just under cryogenic stasis until a scientist sorted out those back problems. Invincible Iron Man, you don't say. Number 5, Arrested. Captain America Civil War is a staple in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The story that begins to unfold in that movie is still being worked out today in the MCU with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So when Sam Wilson tried to help Steve protect Bucky from Black Panther, it ends with them being arrested. And on top of being arrested, Cap got his shield taken away and Sam's wings were also taken. So when Zemo sneaks into the compound disguised as a psychologist, the power goes out and Sam is left to face off against the Winter Soldier without any of his gear. And it doesn't last too long. In fact, none of the Avengers last too long, but Steve was thankfully able to stop him. The whole Sokovia Accords thing made it very hard for them to suit up and start blowing up the whole building. Now, without his wings, the Falcon couldn't fly and would have to catch a super soldier on feet, regular human feet. Odds are you're not going to succeed. He's actually quite great at being a sleeper agent. And he didn't succeed. Nice try, Sam. Your heart's in the right place at least, so that's cool. Number 4, Marvel Zombies. In Marvel Zombies 3, issue 2, we see Falcon and, well, he's not around for too long, thankfully. I know this sounds weird, but hear me out. So Earth 2149 is a universe I hope to never see with my own eyes because it's terrifying. All of our heroes are zombified, they're zombies. It's gory, it's hopeless, and we're actually gonna get some sort of zombie episode for Disney's What If series coming to Disney+. So maybe we'll see this horrible version of Falcon, but hopefully not, because ooh. So Sam received a call from Nick Fury about this terrible world issue, and at this point heroes and villains have put their past aside because now it's go time. He doesn't last long in human form because when Beast and Reed Richards find a large stash of meat in Latveria, a zombie Falcon swoops in with a horde of other zombies. So Zombie Falcon returned to New York, and then when Machine Man and Jocasta arrived, all these flying zombie supers attacked, Falcon of course being one of them. Now alongside him we also have Beak, Angel, and Vulture. Falcon got a hold of Jocasta's leg, robot leg I might add, and she got payback by blasting his head off with her laser eyes. So not Sam's finest hour, that's for sure. Number 3, Chased War Machine. One of the biggest holy shit moments from Captain America Civil War was when Rhodey went down at the end of the airport battle. This was a moment where the audience wasn't actually sure if he had survived or not, and to this day he's still working out his paralysis. So what happened again? Well, while Ant-Man, well rather Giant Man, distracted the rest of the gang, Captain America and Bucky Barnes had made it to the Quinjet while War Machine and Iron Man were flying behind them, trying to get them to stop. So Falcon flew in to help Cap and Buck by launching missiles to distract War Machine. And when Vision shot a laser beam out of the Mind Stone, Falcon quickly reacted by tucking in his wings and free falling out of the way. But that laser had to go somewhere, and it went right through Rhodey's arc reactor. So Sam and Tony flew down as fast as they could to try and catch him, but it was no hope as Rhodey slammed into the ground. Falcon begins to apologize to Tony, but Tony doesn't say a word. He instead hits Sam with a repulsor shot. And the next we see of Sam is when he's locked up with the rest of the Avengers who chose the wrong side on the raft. Sad times. Number 2, he quit being Captain America. So back in 2015, Captain America was Sam Wilson. It was a good time, mostly. See, Steve had given him the shield, and then in the second issue of Captain America Sam Wilson, Sam got into it with shield over some leaked information that had shield creating its own version of the Cosmic Cube. So Sam wasn't on board with this, so he quit working for the government, and he pulled back to just instead being a friendly neighborhood Captain America. Then shield went ahead and made this new Cosmic Cube, Kobik, which actually made Steve Rogers young again, and his superpowers were topped off as well. So they both were working as Captain America. Now we have 2. 2 is better than 1. Isn't this glorious? This is so good. Which was great for a while, but come issue 21, the world had viewed Sam in a negative way, so he quit. He was like, yeah, f you guys, I'm out of here. He quit until the Secret Empire storyline concluded, you know, with the real Steve Rogers coming back from the cube after he defeated his evil self, all that jazz. But even afterwards, he returned the shield yet again to let Steve inspire the world himself, which is super similar to what I think is currently happening in the MCU with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because at the end of episode 1, we meet Number 1, the replacement. At the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 1, right before the credits, we see a pretty shocking announcement. We see the government announce a new symbol of hope, a new Captain America. And there he is, wearing the same suit, rocking the same shield, not Falcon. But instead a new guy, this guy named US Agent. Wyatt Russell is playing this character in the MCU. His name is John Walker, and the character first came into comics with Captain America issue 323. He actually started off opposed to Captain America. He was one of those guys who like stage fights, made himself look better, and then he took on the alias Super Patriot, and then finally he went to the new Captain America. This guy isn't the most gentle in the comics, so it may seem like a good choice for the government and how the current state of the world post-blip is. Kicking off the list at number 10. Born to Kill. Whenever it comes to superheroes and parents, origin stories usually begin on a awful note. Shang-Chi was raised to become a deadly assassin. He didn't have a choice because his father was an immortal sorcerer crime lord. In Shang-Chi's first ever comic book appearance, Special Marvel Edition issue 15, right on the cover, readers are told that although Shang-Chi is the world's most fearsome fighter, and the following pages really drive that home, Shang-Chi is faced off against 4 deadly men, but he's just walking through these guys. He's leaping over swords, he's ducking under kicks. Shang is fierce, but when he's fighting a guy with steel limbs, it doesn't even get close. Shang-Chi declares these metal mitts as useless, seeing as, you know, they're connected to a now broken spinal cord. It's brutal. He takes out another guy by using his left foot on the right side of his face. It's quite intimidating and powerful. But that's what happens when you're taught how to break necks at the age of 4. So when he reaches that last guy, he's called a fool. He says, no matter how skillful you are, you'll never reach my master, Zhang Zhu. But Shang says, actually, you're the fool. That deadly man is in fact Number 9, his father. Yeah, sometimes your parents are evil. It happens. I mean, Gamora, Raven, the Maximoff twins, you don't pick which side you're born on, but once you realize something's not right, it's definitely your responsibility to get the hell out of there. Now, in the MCU adaptation, that's just what he did. Tony Leung plays Zhu Wenwu, the leader of the Ten Rings organization, father to Shang-Chi, and he had discovered the Ten Rings long before the MCU. He found them thousands of years before the birth of his children. These rings allowed him to win many wars, and he did so under the alias the Mandarin. Now, seeing this on the big screen was a spectacle. Watching Wenwu take over armies and single-handedly wipe out hundreds of warriors never looked so good in IMAX. I don't know how else to say it. It's beautiful. The fight choreo is So good, chef's kiss. But eventually, while searching for more land to rule and armies to best, he came across the village of Ta Lo in 1996. It was a paradise filled with mystical beasts. It was an ideal land to have, really, but it wasn't easy to find. He lost his men whilst traveling through the cursed forest, but like other roadblocks, those 10 rings made it easy for Wenwu to make it through to the forest and find the land of Ta Lo. And that's actually where he met Ying Li, aka Number 8, his mother. Ying Li was guarding the entrance to Ta Lo, but Wenwu at this point was used to this. Only when they started to fight, she displayed her own powers, and they were strong enough to finally match Wenwu's strength and durability. They fought for a bit, but ultimately they were impressed with each other's moves. And of course they fell in love. They got married, had 2 children, Shang-Chi and Zhe-Ling. Now this was a turning point in his many years of ruling, because Wenwu retired the rings at this point. He wanted to leave his extensive history in the past and just be a family man. We love a change of heart, yes, love it. But one night, while the kids were still very young, the Iron Gang returned to get revenge on the 10 rings, and Wenwu was not around at that time. Ying Li fought the gang off as long as she could, but there were just too many of them, and she sadly died protecting her children. When Wenwu returned, he would never be the same again, and neither would Shang-Chi. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. We love your support, it really does help us out so much, so thank you for watching and tuning in and subscribing. So hit that thumbs up and we can continue bringing content to you. You're amazing. Let's get back to this list. Number 7, first mission. In the MCU, young Shang-Chi joins his father simply to witness the brutal retaliation he inflicts upon the Iron Gang. And it feels scary at this point in the theaters. It's very intimidating. Wenwu just destroys their room. The rings are back out now in modern day. He's blocking gunshots, he's hucking tables, all the while poor Shang-Chi at a young brittle age is forced to watch. He's seeing this side of his father for the very first time. It's quite a lot. But in the comics, his first mission was much more hands-on. His first mission in the comics happens when he's an adult. Now this is the first time he's in the real world post-training. He's sent to assassinate the most evil man alive, Dr. Petrie. He's super old, but his father refuses to let him die of natural causes. That's insane. The peace of dying at an old age in your bed, that must be denied to him, so Shang-Chi has to be the one to now do it. This next bit of dialogue is important here. He knows that he's trained to be a killer, and the only guiding light is that he thinks his father is an honorable and truthful man. So if this is what has to happen, then it must be for the greater good, right? So he gets close to the doctor's bed and he stops and he thinks for a minute. He's so old and feeble, this feels so wrong to do. The guy's 90 years old, he's in the middle of sleeping, and the guy's literally in REM. What harm could he possibly be doing at this point in his life? As he's sitting there debating all this in his head, Shang-Chi looks over and the old man opens his eyes, and that's when his training takes over and Shang-Chi just hits him once, and that's enough to end his life. On the way out, he was approached by Dr. Sir Dennis Nayland Smith. He reveals his true origins, and Nayland sets the record straight on who's really on the right side here. Number 6, the cat. So after this point, Shang-Chi had become a hero, or at least that was his intentions, which is better off than how we started. His father wasn't happy about his life choice, obviously, so he sent a number of assassins to take him out. During his travels, he met other martial artists and of course other superheroes. He also met his rival, Cat. Shen Kui made his first appearance in Master of Kung Fu issue 38. He too was a master martial artist, and now he was a formidable spy in Hong Kong. First for communist China, and then later on as a freelancer. Shang-Chi was sent to recover lost documents, investigate Cat, and a British agent named Juliet. But when Cat saw Juliet and Shang-Chi talking amongst themselves, he thought that she had revealed his whereabouts. He's skilled, perhaps too skilled, Shang-Chi thinks, because while they were kicking each other in the neck, Juliet stabbed herself just to get them to stop. Now according to Shang-Chi, neither of them know who is more skilled in martial arts. Cat is also immune to the powers of Black Mamba because he's already technically living his greatest fantasy. You love to see it. Even his villains are cool, you know? Whenever you have a hero and his main villain is a cool guy, you're like, ah, it's tough. As far as villains go, I mean, pretty sweet that you're directly matched. And also they're punching each other in the face. I can watch this all day. Number 5, trick shot to the heart. Dark Avengers issue 190. In the alternate Earth of 13584, we see a pocket reality where Tony has undergone a pretty drastic upgrade, if you want to call it an upgrade, of course. He's still Iron Man, only he's evil this time around. And he's also just a brain. Yeah, this is a dark future where New York is the only remaining part of civilization, so the Dark Avengers are fighting over it. When Janet Van Dyne crushes Iron Man, he ejects out of the suit, again just a brain, just rolls on out, and at that moment Clint's brother, Barty Barton, shoots right through the brain with an arrow. At least it was a quick way to go this time around. Number 4, hit by a plane. Marvel's Dark Ages arc featured a pretty rare injury for Tony to endure, considering that he can fly and he's also wrapped in metal. The timing here is just so unfortunate. The story kicks off with an earthquake. Tony tells Pepper to take cover as he tries to figure out a super solution. Shortly after, there's power cuts, classic earthquake move, so now Pepper is stuck in an elevator and Tony's distress calls aren't even going through to the Avengers. Even his suit powers down mid-flight. On the way down, Tony's flailing about when a passing plane hits him and cuts off his left foot. The plane crashes down on the ground and Tony, while losing quite a bit of blood, crashes into Stark Towers. Number 3. Lost the kid. We had an idea of how Infinity War would end. We knew part 2 was a year afterwards, so we knew somebody was biting the dust. Well, half of our beloved heroes ended up turning into dust, including the young Peter Parker. Tom Holland knocked this out of the park. I don't cry in movies often, but when Peter was telling Tony that he didn't want to go, holy shit. This was Tony's final arc, moving to the woods, having a kid, just dropped the superhero life right away, and even when Scott, Steve, and Natasha showed up to offer a possible solution, Tony doesn't even want to be involved. He says he's got a second chance right here, referring to Morgan and Pepper. Losing Spider-Man, Tony felt responsible. He made the kid the suit that allowed him to even go to space in the first place, and then all of a sudden he's a pile of dust all over your lap. Yeah, that would mess me up for 5 years as well. You don't blame him. Number 2, Armor Wars. The Armor Wars series is confirmed to hit Disney Plus sometime down the road, with Don Cheadle attached to the project, so we figured we'd remind you how the comics went. It's just a blast. Armor Wars is a 7-issue series written by David Michelinie and Bob Layton. Now after Iron Man's tech was stolen, Tony was on the hunt to take down several villains using any sort of armor or tech. He's taken down anybody with armor. He even fights fellow Avenger Stingray at one point, although he's innocent. I hope we get that fun introduction in live action. That would be crisp. When Iron Man battled Firepower, he got injured so badly that he faked his own death. See, in the comics at this time, the world didn't know that Iron Man was Tony Stark. They thought it was Tony's bodyguard, a guy named Randall Pierce. So Tony ended up becoming the new Iron Man, although he took all of those punches before anonymously. And finally, number 1, Infinity Gauntlet. Just because the Infinity Gauntlet can undo things doesn't mean we can forget about them. Like that time in the comics when Iron Man got his head ripped off by Taraxia. The Infinity Gauntlet was a 6-part series that began in 1991 from the brilliant Jim Starlin and George Perez. It opens with Silver Surfer crashing down into Earth, saying that Thanos is coming. And come issue 4, the Avengers are now going to Thanos. The plan was for the Avengers to attack Thanos and his new partner, Taraxia. Meanwhile, Silver Surfer was waiting around on deck to snatch that Infinity Gauntlet. Sounds easier said than done. Thanos stops Thor's hammers with his fingertips, Wolverine's adamantium bones turn to rubber, so gross. Cyclops gets his head stuck in a clear block of force, Vision gets the life literally ripped out of him, and Iron Man gets dispatched, as Taraxia says, whilst holding Tony's head proudly. Like it's a birthday cake. She's like, here you go, Thanos, here's a head. Things get undone later on, but that one shot of everybody just laying there, it's gonna live in my head rent-free.
Number 10, getting his memories back. I mean, this is one of the worst and best things to happen to Bucky when you think about it. He pursued his memories for a long time after losing them to brainwashing, but at the same time, they gave him a pretty huge amount of guilt, as he also remembered everything he had done, the person he used to be, but also the person he was shaped into becoming, against his will. It would often mean that we'd get a very different version of Bucky when he returned as the Winter Soldier after he remembered who he was, a much moodier version than the bright-eyed youngster who had been Captain America's confidant, pal, and sidekick. It would also mean that Bucky would often feel he wasn't worthy of certain tasks, titles, or even friendships, and that it would be hard for him to move forward and see himself as the hero that he could be. The hero he always had been before he was manipulated into being a villain that really he was not. Number 9, died in the snap. Oh, I didn't snap. Can't snap today. This is terrible. Don't give me the gauntlet today. Admittedly, not that bad, as all the heroes who died were returned to us once more when the Avengers finally managed to discover the secrets of time travel, used it to collect the stones, and managed to reassemble a version of the gauntlet, and undid what Thanos had done. But still, dying is never really a good time, I imagine, and all the death we experienced at Infinity War was still very tragic. Also, for a while, we didn't really know if it would end up being reversed. I mean, we hoped, we guessed, we assumed, but it was still unknown as to if it would end up being possible for our heroes to bring everyone back. So of course, Bucky is now back, and after Steve traveled back in time to settle down with Peggy, live his life out with her, and basically ended up retiring, the Winter Soldier returns to the screen to team up on Disney Plus with his partner and Cap's friend besides, Falcon, aka Sam Wilson. Alright friends, before we move on to this next point, if you are enjoying this video and you want to see more videos like it and hear more cool stuff about Winter Soldier, be sure to show us you like it by giving it a thumbs up. Hey! Number 8. The death of his parents. Not only does Bucky have a tragic life following the events of World War II, but even before then, it was pretty sad. When he was only 10 years old, he found himself an orphan. His mother had died earlier on when he was younger, making Bucky not just an older brother to his sister, but also kind of a stand-in parent for her as well, with his father working most of the time to provide for the family. Later on, Bucky would lose his father too, who died in a tragic accident that took place during his basic training with the military. Bucky and his sister would ultimately be split up, and Bucky would end up convincing Camp Lehigh, where his dad had trained, to take him in as a ward of the state, with him going on to become the camp mascot, inspiring and later on even assisting the troops. Number 7. A man out of time. Like Captain America, Bucky is also considered a man out of time. While he was born in 1925, he now lives in the present day, meaning that many of his friends from his days when he was a camp mascot during the war times and pal of Captain America, or if we're talking the MCU serving in the war, are now all dead. Not only that, but like Steve, he's had to adapt to the progress of the modern day, adapting to living in a very different world from the one that he was born into. Granted, this may have been easier for Bucky considering he was at least around, at least periodically, throughout the passing years, and as such has at least seen some of the changes as they've happened. But of course, this timelessness could also be hard for him to adjust to, especially considering how much of the time in his life he spent being controlled by others and not really experiencing the world from his own point of view, but being manipulated by others to see it how they wanted him to see it. Number 6. Death of Captain America. The supposed death. Anyways, Steve would later of course return, but yes, at the time, people thought that Steve Rogers was dead after he was shot through what looked to be the neck, yikes, and then later the gut, and yeah, anyways, he's fine, it's all fine. Bucky himself was initially believed to be the culprit, even by Falcon, and the two had a quick scuffle before Bucky explained he'd rather take his own life first before allowing himself to ever harm Steve. Aww. Bucky also then revealed that he was talking to the Nick Fury on comms and was only in the building that the sniper had sniped from because he was attempting to apprehend the person responsible, which then led to Falcon and Bucky teaming up to do so.
Number 5. Midnight Sun. First appearing in Special Marvel Edition issue 16, Midnight Sun aka Minai was the only survivor after Shang-Chi's father had wiped out a British village. Seeing the rage in the young boy's eyes, he decided to raise the boy alongside Shang-Chi, so naturally the two became besties. They became best friends, they worked together and grew up together. After Shang-Chi realized what his life was becoming, after he left, his father sent Midnight to take him out. How twisted is that? His own family, basically. So they fought an emotional battle, but in the end, Midnight fell off a crane and in turn broke his neck. Doesn't anybody listen to Edna Mode? No capes! No capes, or else you'll just Gwen Stacy yourself. Number 4. Humbug. Another ally, another fateful day. Humbug, aka Buchanan Mitty, first appeared in Web of Spider-Man issue 19. He began his days as a Spider-Man villain, which I honestly love, really sticking to the theme of growing up on the wrong side of the track, but after being defeated by Spider-Man so many times, he was like, you know what, screw it, if you can't beat him, join him. So he and Shang-Chi were part of the 2007 Heroes for Hire, and he ends up getting infected by the Brood Queen, and in turn he's forced to betray his teammates. So Shang-Chi was forced to, take him down, and he also does so by ripping off his head. I feel like there's a more peaceful way to do it, but who am I to ask? I mean, look at this. Number 3. Spider Island. A Spider-Man villain going good. We love to see it. Any big change to a character is always fun, good, bad, or downright weird. Like for example, in 2011's Spider Island series, Shang-Chi himself gets infected with the spider virus, and he changes quite a bit. He gains similar powers to Spider-Man, which is cool off the bat, but he also starts having nightmares where he turns into a literal arachnid and subsequently attacks innocent civilians. In Spider Island Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Shang-Chi is recruited to take on the Bride of Nine Spiders, who at the time was holding Iron Fist captive. While he's trying to handle this sticky situation, he mutates even more and his nightmare becomes a reality. The spider's instincts were trying to take over his mind and spirit, but luckily for Iron Fist and his strong will, the spider look didn't last too long. Too close for comfort though, way too close to turning into a spider. Any of those I gotta include, that's a nightmare. Number 2. Domino. Shang-Chi has many lessons to teach, so it's not bizarre that heroes often go to him to sharpen up their spirit or fighting skills. One of those heroes was Domino. In Domino issue 4, released back in 2018, the pair are sparring, they're learning, they're bonding, and then when they're later on in a nightclub, they're kissing. Nice. That's when trouble likes to make its grand, horribly timed entrance. Shang-Chi helps Domino gain her lost knowledge of her powers, so she was able to now save the night single-handedly and take down these enemies. But when Domino finally comes face to face with the one who sent said enemies, Topaz, she can't resist her teacher's advice and she kills them. Shang-Chi was disappointed on many levels, so much so that he had to break off the relationship, both romantic and professional. And finally, number 1, his dated comic book origins. Yeah, we have to talk about the differences between the early comics and what's being represented on screen now, because they're completely opposite, much different. Because if you're reading old Shang-Chi comics to have a better understanding on who his father is and what you're going into for the film, you're going to see some stereotypical, offensive aged content. His father was originally referred to as Fu Manchu in the comics, who Marvel brought out in 1973. Marvel at the time was trying to make bank by capitalizing off popular martial art films and themes. It was discontinued later on in 1983, but this is offensive content that they now have to use to branch off into other side stories like Avengers and stuff like that. Shang-Chi star Simu Liu himself has opened up recently about the role and its historical impact. He says, when you look at the character of Shang-Chi through the comic books going back to the 70s and the 80s, the fact that he existed and the fact that he was an Asian character was amazing. But at the same time, there are aspects of that portrayal of him that maybe could feel a little stereotypical. So when we first started to map out who this character was and who his journey was going to be over the course of this film, we were all very sensitive to not have to go into that stereotypical territory. Now, director Destin Daniel Cretton tried to wipe out as many negative elements as he could, and in the movie there's a powerful moment where the characters are reflecting on the Mandarin from Iron Man 3, and the way that they mention it, well, the way they retcon it, really, is done in a smart and, dare I say, charming way. Number 10, Wanda's mind games. With many comics to pick and choose all these events from, we gotta start somewhere where most of us kinda remember, just to get the gears turning. So we go back now to 2015, Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, before Wanda Maximoff was an Avenger, she was getting her evil days under her belt. She was Team Hydra, or rather Team Ultron in this case. This included playing mind tricks with the Avengers. Wanda got to Banner and he hulked out, and this time it was bad. It ended very badly. Now, at this point in the MCU, the Hulk had a handle on his angry side. It was controllable in a way. All he needed was for Black Widow to tap her fingers on his big old green palm and then say, "Oh, the sun's getting low. You're good. We're all good. Welcome back, Banner. Let's go home." But she wasn't able to do that this time because of Wanda's mind tricks. She was also under her hex. Meanwhile, Ultron's getting his cold hands on some vibranium and Bruce is going nuts. He ends up going absolutely crazy, and it takes Iron Man and his new Veronica armor, the Hulkbuster armor. He has to knock some senses back into him. Literally, he punches him so hard that he goes to sleep. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a like, that would be great. And while you're there, you might as well just subscribe. I mean, you're already watching these videos. Just a little tap-tap-a-roo, and then our face will pop into your YouTube. You don't have to do anything. We'll just show up. So thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back into this video. Number 9, Soul Survivor. Hulk the End, written by Peter David, released in 2002, is a one-shot that takes place in a world where nobody is left but Bruce Banner. In a world probably resembling our near future following a war that ended in nuclear fallout, the issue starts with Banner vlogging. Yeah, just kind of like this in a way. He's accompanied by a vidbot, this floating camera that always hovers 10 feet away from him. It was assigned to confirm and record the fate of the final humans on Earth. Seeing as Banner is the last one and he's not gonna die, it's just gonna follow him around until the end of time. Banner doesn't mind it, but Hulk hates it. God, that would be so annoying. It's like TMZ, but in the future. It's coming. So Banner just absorbs all this nuclear energy, and now he walks about all these wastelands that were once home. He's not totally alone though. No, he comes across these giant mutated cockroaches, and it's a really dark and cold ending for Bruce. The Hulk just wants to be the biggest, baddest creature ever and rule a planet, and Banner just wants to pass away. He's done. He wants nothing to do with this. It goes deep. Also, not to mention that the Hulk often has his body destroyed and devoured by these massive mutant cockroaches. He grows them back afterwards because of the increased gamma, but man, that's gotta suck. Number 8, A Perfect Pair. While Logan broke R-rated records back in 2017, it introduced us to what a darker side to the superhero life may just look like. And in the Old Man Logan storyline, we find the Hulk as one of the few remaining superheroes on Earth. Now at this point, Banner had decided to breed with somebody like him, maybe a bit too much like him. Like say, I don't know, his cousin, Jennifer Walters? Yeah, they had offsprings and they referred to them as Hulk Gang. Now, if you think that's crazy enough, the Hulk Gang was actually responsible for the death of Logan's family. Just cause, well, you know, Hulk Gang gets bored. Hulk Gang wants to fight, that's it. So Wolverine went to exchange a few words with the green guy and the Hulk ended up swallowing Wolverine whole. Yum. Now, it sounds like the Hulk won, but that's not the case in this list. Things are gonna get a little bit different. Wolverine then used his claws to get out in a rather messy way. That's why you don't mess with Logan, Banner, come on. Number 7, kicked out by the Illuminati. When you have this massive green monster that likes to smash buildings and rip people apart, you gotta ask yourself, what do we really do with this guy if things stop working out? Where do we put something like that? Well, you kick him out. Well, rather, you kick him off planet. There's an idea. In Incredible Hulk issue 9, we see this. We see Fury send the Green Goliath out into space for a mission. He was originally sent to destroy the God's Eye, which is a rogue satellite, but then when the dust and wires settle, Hulk gets ready to come back to Earth. Only the shuttle goes a different way. When asked what if the Hulk comes back, Fury responds with, well, we'll deal with it. Well, he didn't return yet, I'll get into that later. But where he did end up, thanks to Fury, was Sakaar. And thus begins the Planet Hulk storyline. Number 6, Horsemen of the Apocalypse. War Hulk. Yes, this guy's great, we gotta talk about him. In X-Men Apocalypse, we caught a glimpse of the Horsemen. We have Apocalypse surrounding himself with the likes of Storm, Cyclops, Gambit, and Archangel, before going to Magneto himself. But what if he recruited the Hulk in this movie? What if we saw that? What would that look like? What if these superhero properties were all under one roof? Well, that's what happens in the Onslaught storyline. We pick up right after the Hulk and Banner split into 2 separate units, and they're on different Earths. So the angry green one ended up being recruited to serve as the Horseman War, thus giving us War Hulk. This version of the Hulk is just a treat. He's even more intimidating and powerful with Apocalypse's upgrade. Even Apocalypse had to put a limit on his powers. That's how you know it's real.
Number 5, used as a pawn in the Civil War. This is more exclusive to the movies, as Bucky didn't play quite as active a role in the first Civil War itself in the comics, but Winter Soldier was a huge part of the reason Iron Man and Captain America came to blows in the MCU's Civil War. Winter Soldier was revealed to be an assassin who was actually Captain America's brainwashed former BFF, James Buchanan Barnes. Gasp! Barnes was framed for the explosive attack on the Vienna International Center during the signing of the Sokovia Accords by Helmut Zemo to create a rift between the supers. Barnes was free and was seeking to learn more of his true past, but Zemo also reactivated his programming to take hold of the Winter Soldier once more so that he could use him to tear apart the Avengers and turn them against one another, especially after he revealed that the Winter Soldier was actually the one responsible for killing Tony's parents. Number 4, Frozen. Like Cap, Bucky Barnes was also frozen, being plunged into frozen waters and later retrieved by a Soviet submarine. Being frozen not only doesn't sound pleasant, because, you know, it's cold and uncomfortable and it hurts, but also it sounds pretty deadly. Bucky was lucky he survived, actually. In fact, the scientists that were to study him weren't even sure that it would be possible to revive him, and after studying him for 2 weeks without finding any traces of the super soldier serum that they had been looking for and hoping to find in his blood, they decided to put him back on ice. Bucky was put into stasis mode for 9 years before he would be revived again so that he could be transformed and weaponized. Number 3, Brainwashed. Bucky was believed dead after he went missing in action. In reality, we later learned that while he had lost his arm in the incident that people believed had killed him, Bucky himself had actually survived. Unfortunately, it was the Soviet Union who had found him and took him in. Keeping his discovery a secret, they brainwashed Barnes, making him loathe the West, turning him into a cyborg, giving him a cybernetic arm in place of the one that he'd lost, and began training him to turn him into their very own weapon and assassin. Number 2, Recaptured. The Winter Soldier, it should be noted, has escaped his captors in the past, but sadly, due to having his brains kinda scrambled, was never able to free himself fully due to the fact that he found himself confused without his handlers and lost. After the assassination of Senator Harry Baxter, the Winter Soldier missed making his extraction point and instead disappeared, going off the grid. Unfortunately for him, without his puppet masters controlling him, he didn't really know where to turn or what to do, and he ended up being recaptured by them shortly thereafter, eventually being located in New York and then taken back in. They decided that his return to America must have triggered something in him, wiped his brain, and were careful to note in his file that missions that would take him to the USA should be avoided in the future. Number 1, used as a deadly weapon. In the MCU and in the comics, the Winter Soldier is brainwashed and programmed to be an assassin and a weapon, which is probably why he and Black Widow get along so well in the comics and even end up together romantically now and then. They both understand what it's like to be made into a monster, to be manipulated into doing evil deeds that they probably ordinarily wouldn't have done otherwise, but that they still obviously carry a lot of guilt about. The Winter Soldier was used to take out a ton of targets over the years, including Howard Stark and Maria Stark in the MCU, and in the comics, Nomad, Wolverine's love Itsu Akihiro, and President John F. Kennedy, to name a few.
Number 10, Uncle Ben. I figured we'd kick this list off with a fresh, tragic reminder of how Spider-Man came to be in the first place. I'm really glad the MCU didn't make us sit through this scene again again. In Spider-Man's first comic book appearance, Amazing Fantasy issue 15, Peter's life changes a lot in those 35 pages. He gets bitten by a radioactive spider, giving him life-changing, incredible abilities. He makes some cash, taking down some wrestlers. He literally gets scouted by a TV producer after just one gig. He learns how to shoot webs. He makes a sweet outfit, makes a sweet appearance on a sweet TV show. This guy's literally offered movie roles, interviews, tons of money, and Peter at this point is now just cocky as hell. He's like, yeah, call my agent, boys, I'm busy. And then a thief runs by and he doesn't do a single thing about it because he's through being pushed around. Okay, great. Well, you know the drill. That same thief was the guy who ended up taking Uncle Ben's life. You played yourself, Pete. Number 9, armed and dangerous. In The Amazing Spider-Man issue 100, we find Peter on the streets, webbing up some bad guys, just a usual Thursday night. Now at this point, he's getting tired of New Yorkers looking at him like he's the criminal. He's kind of done being with Spider-Man, so he wants to hang up the spandex and settle down with Gwen Stacy. Now in order for this to happen, Peter needs to get rid of Spider-Man completely. And so he begins working on a serum that will strip him of his powers. He doesn't even test it out either. He just mixes it up and then gulp right down the hatch. Okay, he's brave. Whatever happens, I did it for you, Gwen. I wonder if that includes growing 4 extra arms. Yeah, those back massages just got way better in the Parker household. It's a funny couple of issues. I mean, some panels with Peter having extra naked arms in the frame, it does look a little bit odd. Only after making a new serum with Morbius's blood did Peter go back to normal. Number 8. One More Day. This 4-parter began back in 2007 in Amazing Spider-Man issue 544, and instead of Peter dealing with thugs or giant lizards, he's now dealing with the devil, Mephisto. Now we thought he was the one pulling the strings in WandaVision, and some still believe that he's pretending to be Doctor Strange in the No Way Home trailer, some being me, perhaps, I'll never tell. And it's because of this comic that makes us think this stuff. This takes place after Civil War, right after Spider-Man reveals his identity to the public, so now villains are going after him. So when a bullet strikes Aunt May instead of Peter, he feels guilty beyond imagination. So this looks like a job for the devil. Mephisto appears in the form of a young girl and lures Spider-Man away to offer him a deal. Mephisto tells Peter that he can save Aunt May, but the payment also has to be pretty high caliber. He doesn't want Peter's soul or anything like that. Instead, he wants his marriage. So they agree as long as Peter's secret identity becomes a secret again. So right before Mephisto alters reality, he tells the couple that the young girl that he appeared as was actually their future daughter, adding insult to injury. Peter wakes up the next day alone with Aunt May alive, score, and the world doesn't know who Spider-Man is. I think this is a win, I think it's a loss, I'm not sure what to call this, but either way, my heart hurts. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to give us a thumbs up, you know the drill. If you're loving this content, or if you want a part 2, hit that thumbs up, comment down below, give us all the love, and then we'll give it all back. You guys are amazing. Now back to this list. Number 7, Doc Swap. The Dying Wish storyline begins in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 698. Peter gets a priority call from the Avengers, and when he meets them at the raft, Cap and the team are waiting. He tells Peter an old enemy of his is not looking too shabby and he probably won't make it. Peter knows off the bat already that it's Doc Ock. He just knows it somehow. Incredible. So he asks everybody for a moment alone, just them two. So everybody leaves, and that's when Doc Ock starts saying some really weird stuff. He's like, Peter Parker, but I'm Peter Parker. And then Spider-Man responds with even more confusing dialogue. He's like, nope, not anymore. From now on, I'm Spider-Man. And readers are like, what's going on right now? Did I miss a page? What's happening? This is by far one of the worst days for Peter because now he's trapped in Doc's old decaying body, waiting as the hours go by to literally die, while Doc Ock spends a night or two in Peter's advanced, healthier body. Number 6, Spider-Man, Look Who's Home. Beginning with Amazing Spider-Man 365, Peter discovers that his parents, who have been dead for quite some time, are back. Nice. And he believes it for a hot minute. And by hot minute, I mean this goes on for like 20 issues. That's wild. Aunt May gets a private investigator because she feels like something is just not quite right about this. Peter, on the other hand, feels so comfortable that he decides to tell his parents, you know, who have been in a Russian camp for 20 years, sure, that he is in fact Spider-Man. This guy's spilling huge secrets already. Okay, this is odd. And then in issue 388, we learn that they're actually robots. Nice one, Chameleon. You fooled us again. He's so good with his robots. Number 5, Nightmare's Mind Games. We go now to the Incredible Hulk issue 299. So after the Avengers and everybody decided, hey, the Hulk can finally control himself, let's be nice and maybe make a statue for the guy. He earned it. Earth's mightiest heroes. We love this guy. This is the best. And then in comes the villain Nightmare, just to ruin the day for everybody involved. He taps into Banner's subconscious and then makes him resort back to the monstrous, uncontrollable ways that he used to be. Again, kind of like when Wanda toyed with him in Age of Ultron, except this time he had a nice handy statue to break over his friends' heads instead, you know? He grabs a statue that was made for him and then he tosses it right at Thor. The Hulk even goes after Banner's girlfriend, Kate Waynesboro, so surely this is the day the Hulk never wished happened, so we had to include it. Number 4, Train of Emotions. Not all of these outbursts are necessarily the Hulk's fault. Sometimes it's the humans or other evil villains that are involved that just use him as a vessel. He's forced to live with a good amount of trauma, so much so that he's easily triggered by humans and their machines, like trains, for example. In the Incredible Hulk issue 122, the Hulk has a moment where he kind of destroys an entire locomotive. Hear me out, Hulk is still the victim in this situation. Now the thing is, no passengers were on the train. Great, lucky, awesome. But before he lashed out, he explained how these machines are always hurting the Hulk, or they carry soldiers to where the Hulk is hiding. So he's used to humans wanting to hurt him or do tests on him. So much so that just the sight of the train upsets our man. Now imagine if there were people on that train. They would think that it's all his fault, when in actuality it's just the government scaring him. I don't know, maybe stop launching missiles at him. He might trust you. Just an idea. Number 3, Sent to Space. Again. This time it wasn't Director Fury, no. This time it happened in Amazing Spider-Man issue 328. The Hulk gets launched into space, but not in a fancy ship and not for a fancy mission, but because Spider-Man was the current Captain Universe host, and the Hulk simply got in his way. Peter Parker obtained these new powers. He can now control web lines through willpower alone, and the dude can straight up fly. This is a great day for Peter, but it's about to become way more interesting. In comes the Hulk, ready to smash for bucks, as he puts it. Well, Peter and his new powers have got some showing off to do. After a brief exchange of words and punches, Peter finishes the battle by punching the Hulk into space. And the Hulk has accepted defeat. He thinks this is the end. He's like, wow, just like the Beatles, here comes the sun. Look at me, defeated by something I can't even punch. How tragic. And then Spider-Man swoops up, grabs him, and pulls him back down to Earth. Close one. Number 2, the other snap. In the series Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect, we meet the alternate dark future version of the Hulk. His name was the Maestro. He made his first appearance in a vision back in Incredible Hulk Volume 2, issue 401. But the Maestro is the main antagonist in this story. Now it takes place about 100 or so years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet close to extinction, similar to Hulk the End, similar vibes. Now the Maestro had been absorbing all this nuclear radiation this whole time, and he ended up becoming the strongest thing on the planet. He had these massive increases in strength and anger, plus he had the brains of Banner, so arguably he's unstoppable. While the two beasts are scrapping it out, the Hulk helps some bystanders out when a building almost crushes them. Now while this is happening and he's distracted, in comes Maestro and snaps the Hulk's neck. I mean, that would suck any day of the week, but a future version of yourself doing it, I mean, that just adds insult to injury. And finally, number 1, punched into retirement. Thor Ragnarok ended with the Asgardians drifting off into space. Surtur had just laid waste to Asgard in order to defeat Hela, and like Odin himself said, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And these people are about to run into a bigger, badder ship very shortly. Avengers Infinity War opens with the same ship being taken over by Thanos and the Black Order. It starts off with Ebony Maw. He's giving a nice speech to a bunch of people who are dead and can't even hear the speech. And meanwhile, Thanos is rolling back his shoulders. He's already obtained the power gem at this point, and he knows the Space Stone is on this ship. But the Hulk comes out for one last swing. He comes out beast mode and starts smashing Thanos. Now for a moment, we think that the Hulk has got him. For a moment. And then Thanos, without the use of the Power Stone, beats up the Hulk so hard that he doesn't come out in the entire movie. This guy punched him in the neck so hard, he was like, okay, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm definitely not coming out. See you in 5 years, maybe.